This is Regain Wellness Podcast with Jamie Logie, episode 108. How big should your portion sizes be? Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jamie Logie. I run regainedwellness.com, and you're listening to the Regain Wellness Podcast. So thank you so much for joining me here today. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe just so you automatically get the shows delivered to you each week, and then I don't have to hand deliver them to your door to take up all that precious time. So just hit subscribe if you're listening on iTunes. Everyone loves pressing buttons, so hit subscribe, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. I'm on pretty much everything: Stitcher Radio, iHeartRadio, Google Play, pretty much everything. So most people listen on iTunes, so go ahead and grab that if you haven't already. So today I'm talking about how big portion sizes should be. I think that throws a lot of people off as far as how big they should be. I'll talk about why this is more important than, looking at calorie content and counting calories. And then also, top suggestions for what each of those portions should be, whether it's like protein or fat or carbs and all that stuff. Okay, so let's get to it. So why am I talking about the size of your portions as opposed to, counting your calories and controlling your calories? Well, if you haven't listened to it already, I have an episode with a author named Jonathan Baylor, who's a New York Times bestselling author, and he wrote a book called The Calorie Myth. And I'll touch on a little of that stuff, but definitely go back and listen to that episode, and it'll totally re-educate you on how calories are viewed and how they're not all created equal, and how calories in is different than calories out. And so if you go to regainedwellness.com/108, I'll have that episode linked in so you can listen to it, and every other, if I'm not mentioning other resources here today, that'll be on that link, regainedwellness.com/108. So the problem with calorie math is that essentially your body is not a calculator. It's a biological organism, and it changes depending on the circumstances it's in. So say you're eating 2,000 calories, and then you think you're making use of all those, or you're burning off a certain amount, but your body changes on a day-to-day level, and you have no idea how many calories you're actually using and utilizing. And your body, just because there's a number on a calculator, your body doesn't see it that way. It just knows nutrition and its energy requirements for that day. So if you've been more active that day, if your body is stressed, or if it's run down, or if there's temperature changes or elevation changes or hormonal changes, if you're male, female, all that sort of thing, that totally changes the need and requirements for your calories. So like I said, your body's not a calculator. You don't just plug into these figures and your body magically adapts to them. There's a lot more that goes behind it. The other thing is you have really no idea how many calories you're taking in. So even if you're absolutely getting them down to the single calorie perfectly recorded through looking at nutrition guides or reading labels. The problem is on whether it's, say an apple or a package of gummy bears. They'll have nutrition information on there and have a calorie content. A lot of the time, that information on the calorie content can be off by as much as 25%. So say in the case of an apple, not every apple is the exact same size. So right there, you're going to have varied calories between them. And a lot of the information on calorie content in foods is just taken from a database and doesn't really apply to those individual foods all the time. It's a rough guide. And then that's the same problem with packaged stuff. They're just taking basic information and throwing on. They're not necessarily testing the exact amount of calories in something. So that's 25% off can create absolute havoc, in the body if you're off by 25%, more calories. Your body will learn to process and adapt the amount of food that it has coming in. So it's not that calories don't matter or they don't count. It's that you want to be looking at the right type of calories, because some have a hormonal response that cause elevations in blood sugar and then an insulin response. And if that energy is not used, that's the job of insulin. It's the fat producing and storing hormones. So, to say all calories are created equal, if you ever hear anyone say that, just walk away. They really don't know what they're talking about. So if you have, I actually had this, I think it was, I wrote an article somewhere, and someone, I think it was for Lifehack, and someone chimed in on just having to worry about calories as a number, not what the food source is. And it was just baffling me. I was trying to explain, if you have, say, 100 calories in almonds and 100 calories that come from, say, a glass of Coke or a portion of Coke, both of those things are going to have completely different hormonal responses in the body. The Coke is pure sugar along with a lot of other additives that's just going to, like I said, spike your blood sugar, create that insulin response. It's full of high fructose corn syrup, which, usually goes right to the liver. It can cause, fatty liver syndrome. And then basically you have the sugar crash after, and then there's more cravings for more sugar. It's a whole mess. Whereas, say, 100 calories in almonds are primarily protein, some fiber, and a bit of natural water and some healthy fats that's contained within the almond. They're going to keep your blood sugar at bay. The fiber is going to help keep you fuller for longer. You're not going to have that up and down cravings. So, this is the way you want to look at your food when it's, if it's hormonally friendly or unfriendly. So, obviously the hormonally unfriendly foods are going to be the refined carbohydrates, sugars, anything processed, basically. If it's white, it's going to have a bad hormone response in the body, whether it's white flour, white bread, white pasta, starches, rice, sometimes, maybe potatoes, depending on, like, russet potatoes are super high starchy potatoes. Not in all cases, but obviously anything refined and processed and sugar-based is going to cause those hormonal responses, where the things that won't, that you should be focusing on, that'll keep you filled up and running on good energy and lasting and being fuller longer, are going to be those things, like I mentioned, like healthy fats like olive oil, avocados, eggs, nuts and seeds, good protein, all the green leafy vegetables you can possibly eat, vegetables in general, preferably green ones. The darker the greener the better. It's a higher chlorophyll content, a higher phytonutrient content, better minerals, and that stuff again contains those things that keep you full, like fiber, protein, water, and then fruit is obviously good, but you got to be a little more careful with it, depending on if you have a weight issue, or if you're having insulin resistance, or blood sugar issues, or diabetes or whatnot, because a lot of modern fruit is extremely sugary. Things like mango and papaya and pineapple and whatever. Your best choice fruit wise are going to be the citrus based fruits like lemons, limes, oranges, and primarily berry-based fruits. So blackberries, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, those are your best bet. Green apples are really good too. If a fruit is extremely sweet, it could be causing some of those issues too. It seems weird to be hesitant about fruit, but it just depends on the situation you're in. So again, it has that natural sugar. The release is slowed down in fruit because it's got that natural fiber and in things like pectins and roughages, like natural roughage, that helps slow that absorption, but it can still cause that blood sugar spike, especially if it's eaten on its own. So, sorry, if you have those issues with, diabetic related issues, or you have hypoglycemia, anything like that, where your blood sugar can kind of go up and down, if you are eating fruit, try to have something protein or fat based before, and it helps slow that insulin release. So whether it's some almonds or walnuts or nut butters, they're really good, and then have the fruit. It's not always the case with the berries and what, like blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. They're a little higher in fiber. So I like, obviously fruit good, but just the right ones at the right time. So that, this calorie issue is pretty crazy. There's a pretty famous book by a guy named Gary Taubes called he's got a couple. It's Calories In, Calories Out, or Good Calories, Bad Calories. And then he has another one called Why We Get Fat. And it's on this whole issue of, if a calorie is a calorie, why are they creating these problems? And it has to do with that hormonal response again. And he goes on in the book, and there's information there too. Like, most people don't even really know what a calorie is, and they just think it's something you got to be aware of or be careful. But in a technicality, a calorie is kind of a measure of energy, and it's 1 calorie is what it takes to heat 1 liter of water by 1 degree. And the way they figure out calories is they take it's kind of like a spectrometer type thing. It looks like a lantern. I'm trying to describe this with my hands, which is obviously not working, but it's basically they take, say it's an apple or whatever, they take that food item and they freeze dry it kind of down into a powder. Then they put it in this kind of chamber in this, if you can picture a lantern that's got water inside it, and in the middle it's kind of where the light bulb or whatever would be, is this chamber. And basically they incinerate it, and then they measure the rise in the temperature of the water surrounding it, and that's how they find the calorie content in the food is in the energy. So it's basically like they light off this little bomb of this freeze-dried food and then see what the response is as far as the temperature rise. So the problem, like I mentioned before, is your body doesn't incinerate food, it digests food, and it processes it. Whoa, that's a hard word to say. Processes it depending on your needs for that day. So, if you've been active, or if you've been sitting at a desk all day, or if you've just worked out, there's so many different requirements for how your body processes calories. So this calorie content, that's how they get it. A lot of the times it's not even correct. It's off by, like I said before, as much as 25%. So you can see why calorie math is a complete mess, and how there's no real way to kind of master it. So definitely, I read that book if you can. It's one of the Calorie Myth by Jonathan Baylor, but definitely listen to that episode because he breaks us all down really well. And I don't want to repeat a ton of the information he's gone over already. So that leads us into how to figure out the best portion sizes. So what we're doing today is the best guide that a lot of people recommend, and I do too, to clients and people have been training and whatnot, is going by your hand size. So that's pretty easy because everyone hopefully listening has hands on their body, and the size of your hand correlates pretty nicely to the requirements of your body. And if you're bigger, taller, whatever, you tend to have bigger hands. If you're smaller, you have smaller hands. There's a bad Donald Trump joke in here somewhere, but I'm going to leave the small hand thing alone here. So what we're going to look at first is how to use your hand to determine the size of the food you should be eating. So the first thing we're going to look at is protein serving size and how big that should be. So if you're looking at your hand, you're going to look at your palm, and the size of your palm and the width of your palm is going to be the portion size of the protein you're going to eat. And that, protein, obviously, your meats, your fish, your eggs, even things like some beans, even quinoa, it's a good protein source. But primarily, chicken, fish, the protein-dense foods. That portion size you want is going to be that size, so your whole palm size and width. If you're a guy, ideally you want to have 2 of those portion sizes at each meal. Usually men are a bit bigger, more muscle mass, and have a little higher protein requirement. If you're a woman, go for 1 of those palm-sized portions at each meal. And again, those are your best bets for protein. And try to find the cleanest sources possible. I covered this a bit last week in the episode I did on supermarkets and where to get the best sourced food. And when you're getting the grocery store, the big chain supermarket proteins, they tend to come from inferior sources. Like they tend to come from cows that are feedlot, confinement-based animals that have been pumped full of hormones, and you're eating basically something that's not even a true natural animal at that point. It's been just altered so much, and the meat is potentially so polluted, again, with all those hormones, and they've been over-fattened and whatnot. You want to look for, if you can, if you want the best suggestion on proteins, is you want the true grass-fed, that's grass-finished, hormone-free type beef. Same thing with chicken. You want free-range, hormone-free. You just want, if you eat a sick animal, you might get sick too. So you want to eat the cleanest source possible. So that's what you're looking at for a portion of protein. So next, your vegetable intake. You want to go for, so you're looking at your hand again, you want to go for a fist size. So that whatever you're eating as far as vegetables, you want it to be around the size of your fist. And at each meal, you want to have around 2 of those portion sizes of vegetables. So your best bet, like I was mentioned before, green-based vegetables, spinach, kale, broccoli, dandelion roots, any, like I said, the darker the green, the better. Then, even those spring mixes can be okay. I would avoid salads that are, those crappy bag salads and the salad looks pretty much white. There's not a lot of, they're like crunchy, watery. That's pretty much what it is. You may as well have a glass of water instead of those. You want the deep, dark colored greens. So again, yeah, like, carrots, all the good vegetables. Go for men and women, 2 of those fist-sized portions with each meal. So next we'll move on to carbohydrate intake. So remember, as much as we think about like grains and starches as being a carbohydrate intake, and they are, you're still getting carbohydrates from, those vegetables and from fruits. So don't think it always has to be a starch-based carbohydrate for your intake. And then a lot of this, again, depends on your activity level. If you are, say in the morning, if you're going to a desk job where you're sitting for 8 hours, you probably don't need that many carbohydrates first thing in the morning. You're not going to be expending a lot of that energy. If you do work somewhere where it's, maybe you are at a desk, but you're up and down and then you're running stairs to different floors or offices or whatnot, you can have a bit more. But in the morning, if you're looking to, decrease body fat and you're going to be sitting for quite a while, I would taper down the carbs in the morning and focus more on protein and good fats in the morning as your breakfast. And then say you are active and you are working out, but you work out later in the day, that's where your lunch or your pre-workout meal, that's when it can contain the carbohydrates. So your best bet, carbohydrate-wise, whether it is grains or starches, is going to be things like sweet potatoes, brown rice, ideally wild rice, which is easier to find now in a lot of bulk food stores. And any of those there's different combinations of rices depending on where you live, and they have, they might have some like pearled barley in it. And where I live in Ontario, I can get this rice from the west, this kind of Saskatchewan, Western Canada prairie rice, which is black. It's denser. It's a little more nutty. Anything like that, I'd avoid white rice. Even some of the brown rices out there aren't that good. Look for wild rices, and things like that. Like I said, sweet potatoes. Some potatoes could be good. I mentioned watching out for the higher, the fluffier baked type potatoes. Those are a kind of a high glycemic item. And then again, like quinoa is a really good carbohydrate source, with one of the few vegetarian sources that has complete protein in it. So that's really interesting. And then also, again, that's where your fruit comes in. That's still considered a carbohydrate source. The berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, all that stuff. So portion size, if you're trying to figure out how many carbohydrates you should have at one meal, you want to take your hand and cup it, and what you could fit in there is going to be your carbohydrate portion. So for men, again, if you're more on the active side, you want to have 2 of those cupped hand size portions at each meal, and for women, 1 cupped hand. And again, depending on where you're at in your health and your fitness and whatnot, or if you're still trying to lose weight or whatever, that's what's going to determine the ideal carbohydrate source in that meal. So it doesn't have to be like the 2 cupped hands of, say, sweet potatoes. You could have 1 cupped hand of sweet potatoes, like if you are trying to lose weight, and then the 1 hand could be the mixed berries, and that's going to be your other carbohydrate source at that meal. If you're more active, if you're playing sports, if you're looking to put on muscle, if you're training hard in the gym, then you can go for the 2 more the grain starch-based cupped hands at whatever meal, and then the 1 for women, and you can go with that whatever carbohydrate source you want is in the starch category. So next we'll look at fat intake. So your best bet for fat, like I was mentioning earlier before, are those things like olive oil. Coconut oil is awesome. Butters can, if you can get a really clean, natural, organic butter, they're not bad. Butter's something we've eaten for quite a while, and people have done okay on it. It's when you start, I would avoid margarines, vegetable oil, stuff like that they can create inflammation in the body. They're high in like omega-6s, and a lot of these things they find actually can be quite rancid because they're like with vegetable oils, they add in a lot of not dyes, but almost like perfume type things, which can mask the degradation of the oil. And the larger the container it is, the worse the content can be, because it could be exposed to more oxygen, the natural breakdown. Same thing with olive oil, actually. As good as olive oil is, don't buy those giant vat Costco variety olive oils. They're so big. The problem that happens is olive oil is not super stable, and the same thing as more of the olive oil is out of the body, it's replaced with the oxygen inside it, and that oxygen breaks it down and it becomes more rancid. So you want to have smaller containers of olive oil, and ideally, if you can find it's a little bit more, but I think it's worth the money, like those specialty olive oils. And if you can find olive oil stores, which are now more popular, where they have different infused olive oils, and you can buy matching really good balsamic vinegars. And they should be in a super dark type bottle, so they just won't get exposed to as much oxygen and air. And they do this with wine now. The same thing with wine is when the oxygen, say you have a full bottle and it goes down to a half bottle, the oxygen in there can break down the wine a lot quicker, not just spoil the taste and the aroma and the bouquet and all that stuff that comes with wine, but it just breaks it down and can turn it into vinegar sometimes, like that. So you just don't get the lifespan out of a bottle of wine. So what a lot of restaurants do, and I've worked in some that do this, is they have these, if they're selling wine by the glass and not using the whole bottle, and say you have a bottle of a decent whatever and you pour only 2 glasses, you still have quite a bit in that bottle. You don't want to, it's maybe with red wine, it's maybe got a couple days at its top quality. And with white wine, if you keep it refrigerated, you can, maybe stretch it to 4 or 5 days, but you don't want to get rid of it. So they've created these machines. They're like, it's kind of like a wine preservation system. And it's where they hook up the bottles with this kind of topper. And what it does is it fills the bottle with nitrogen. So, and it also acts as a dispenser. So you can put the glass under. It almost looks like a soft drink thing at McDonald's. And you can hit the button. It'll pour out the perfect measurement. And as that oxygen is starting to go in, instead of it, taking over that empty space, the nitrogen is pushed into the bottle. That helps the dispensing process, and then the nitrogen stays in the bottle and it preserves the wine. And in a lot of the cases, especially with the red wine, that nitrogen will keep that bottle, say it's like half full or whatever, for honestly up to 3 months. And it's still as good as the day as you opened it. So that's the problem with oxygen and how it breaks down food. I didn't mean to talk so much about oxygen, but here you go. And that's the problem with the olive oil, is you don't want those big bottles because it spends more time exposed to the oxygen, which breaks it down and degrades the product. So try and get the specialty ones in the smaller containers. So that's a really good healthy fat choice. Like I said, nuts and seeds are all awesome. And to determine your fat intake, the best portion size way to go is to take your thumb, from the tip of your thumb down to, not all the way down to where your wrist is, but down to where your thumb kind of meets your hand, when you bend it in, and then your knuckles down there. So that size, that's what you want your fat portion to look like, whether it's like, a bunch of almonds, or, it's a little harder with, say with a liquid like olive oil or whatnot, but you can get an idea of how much volume that would be. Nut butters are really good too, like almond butter, cashew butter, stuff like that, and roughly around that size. So for men, 2 of those thumb-sized portions with each meal would be good, and for women, 1 of those thumb-sized portions will be ideally the right portion size for your body. So again, this is a rough guide, but a pretty good jumping off point for someone when they're, as a quick takeaway. When I coach people, I do if you're interested in this, I do online nutrition health coaching. That's when you get a little more specific, where you figure out what your day is like, your energy expenditure, whether you're needing a little more, a little less, if your goal is like to lose body fat or put on muscle. It gets a little more specific. If you're interested in that, feel free to write me. I'm taking on some new clients right now, and that's if you write to info@regainedwellness.com and just tell me kind of where you're at, what you're looking for, and we can kind of hash things out, as it were. So, but for someone just to get started, even though it's not perfect, this hand portion size is a pretty good way to go. Like I said, the size of your hand is kind of related to the size of your body, and you can get it a little more. Like when you're putting your plate together, you're making food, and you don't know how much of what to put on a plate. That's the way to go. So to wrap it up, for men, basically 2 of each of those portion sizes with each meal. So with protein, 2 palm sizes, 2 fists of vegetables, 2 cupped hands of the carb dense food, whether it's, the fruits or the carbohydrate, like the starches, and then 2 thumb sizes of fat dense food. For women, at each meal, 1 palm size of the protein dense food, the 1 fist size. You can do 2, like I said, with the vegetables at each meal, then the 1 cupped hand of the carb dense related foods, and then 1 entire thumb size of the fat dense food for most of your meals. Like I said, then from there, it's, I don't know what your specific energy requirements are, what your day's like, but from there you can kind of, see if you need a little more energy. So if you can bump that up a bit, or if that's a little too much, you can back off a bit on the carbs and go to like half a cup size, depending on whatever your goals are. The main thing is just to be aware of what you're eating. And then the main focus is that you're getting in real whole foods. You notice all these things we've been talking about, whether it's, free range chicken or quinoa or almonds. These are all real foods that your body responds to so much better. We're not talking about big slices of bread here, or a half a bag of chips, or the things that are going to create those problems in the body. The more you stick to those real whole foods, your body recognizes, it's more able to make use of those, keep things hormonally at bay, function better. It's going to get all those nutrients it needs, and it's getting all those macronutrients too, but like also things like the fiber and the healthy fats and the water, and you're not going to be as hungry as often. So that's the main thing, is not just get the right portion sizes, but make sure it's from the right food choices too. So how about we cut it off there? That's a good place to stop. Like I said, if you want more info, if you're looking for maybe one-on-one type coaching, write to me at info@regainedwellness.com. And then if you want to see, a little more on the things I was talking about and the resources and that other show on more information on calories, if you go to regainedwellness.com/108, I'll link up all those things, and then I'll list out the how big the portion sizes should be. So I'll just list it out again. So I'll put like for protein, palm width, and the cup hand, just so it's right there if you want to double check it, or I forgot what I had said through the whole thing. Okay. So thank you for listening. Like I said, if you haven't already subscribed to the show, if you really like it, leave a rating and review. That makes it more available to more people, and feel free to share it if you want to. And I think I'll cut it off there. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon. Bye.